James William Bilodeau. What is a father? Well, there's a lot of variability from one father to the next. Some fathers do no more than contribute a little DNA. Ideally, a father is a lot more than that. My dad certainly was. I've always felt that David and I won the grand prize when God picked Dad as our father. Dad had many qualities that made him a great father. First and foremost, he was very loving. He adored my mother, and he loved us boys. When you know your parents love each other and they love you, you feel happy and you feel safe. You're insulated, to some degree at least, from the bad things that come along in life. I believe Dad's example of what a good husband and father should be was his greatest gift to us. Dad had many other qualities. I think on top of his qualities, he was lucky. He was a smart version of Forrest Gump. He either saw or actively participated in several major historical events during his life. One of these in particular, manned space flight to another planet, probably ranks up on the list with fire, the wheel, agriculture, and the printing press. Dad was born on November 14, 1923 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to George and Lenora Bilodeau. This was only 20 years after the Wright brothers' first airplane flight. As a young man, Dad developed a fascination with aviation. He built numerous powered model airplanes, some designed from scratch, not using a kit, and they all flew well. If you watch the slideshow, you'll see several of the examples of this. Accordingly, when the U.S. Entered World War II, Dad finished high school and then enlisted in the Army Air Corps. This was in 1942, and he was 19 years old. He applied for flight training and was sent to Texas, not knowing that this is where he would spend his work life and raise a family later on. He was a good student in the classroom and in the air, and thus he was chosen for the job he most coveted, fighter pilot. One of his flight instructors told him that he was the best, most instinctive stick and rudder man that he had ever seen. When he finished training and earned his wings and a commission as a second lieutenant, he was sent to the South Pacific, where he joined the 58th Fighter Squadron. On his third mission, which was really his first real mission because the first two were just escort duty, he was shot down while attacking the Japanese airfield on Negros Island in the Philippines. The fact that he even lived through that initial few minutes is a miracle and tells you how lucky he is. He was hit in the wing. The plane would have rolled into the ground 95 times out of 100 with somebody who had slower reflexes, but he pulled it up, jumped out, and ran down some ravine where he found a young Filipino boy who hid him until dark when he came back with the Philippine Underground. And a month later, they enabled Dad to be picked up by a PBY and returned to his unit. He talked this over with his leaders. They gave him a chance to go home because you're allowed to do that after you've been shot down, but he chose to finish his tour. That whole episode is a 1 in 1,000 that you could ever pull that off again. Near the end of the war, while flying over southern Japan, he and his group also had the occasion to see the cloud from the second atomic weapon. Not necessarily a pleasant thing, but certainly historically significant. After the war, he went to the University of Minnesota, earned a degree in aeronautical engineering, and went back to building planes. He met my mother and somehow convinced her to marry him, which she did in 1948, again proving the vast reservoir of luck from which he was able to draw. In 1951, they moved to Dallas when he took a job at Chance Vaught Aircraft. He was one of the primary designers of the F-8 Crusader, a then cutting-edge supersonic jet fighter. While at Chance Vaught, he witnessed another lesser-known but historical event. A man named Tom Dolan had a conversation with Wernher von Braun one day to try to sell him on the concept of modular spacecraft and lunar orbit rendezvous as the correct method for getting to the moon. That's indeed what later happened. Dad was just standing there listening to all of this. Soon after this, Dad took a job at NASA in Houston. He and Mom moved us there in 1962 during the Mercury program. Initially, he was the assistant division chief for the division that trains the astronauts and writes the flight crew procedures. Needless to say, this was a very exciting time for Dad, Mom, and David and I. We met astronauts, several of those, including John Glenn and Buzz Aldrin, went to our church. Deke Slayton lived around the block. His son was in David's class at school. While at NASA, Dad witnessed good, bad, and unbelievable. The bad, Apollo pad fire, deaths of several astronauts and training crashes. The good, obviously, Apollo 11 and beyond. I mean, Dad was able to be on the team that put men on the moon. The awesome, well, he was promoted to division chief a month before Apollo 13, and that really happened about as you've seen it in the movie Apollo 13. The CO2 buildup, the problems powering up the command module, the problems with re-entry. Dad's people had a role in making this rescue successful. I think this was NASA's finest hour. Dad was blessed with good common sense, though. He knew there had been several partial burn-throughs of O-rings on the rocket boosters. He also felt that the pressure to have 1 to 2 flights a month was too much. And he chose that opportunity to leave NASA because he felt that disaster was inevitable. Unfortunately, he proved to be correct, but he was gone by the time that those dark days came. In summary, he flew fighter planes. He saw the second atomic bomb. He designed jet aircraft to put men in space. He conned my mom into marrying him. Lucky. I just decided maybe some people make their own luck. In our family, Dad was king. He was like Zeus astride Mount Olympus. David and I knew that he had superpowers because we could go on vacations to see our relatives in Minnesota or go up to the Ozarks. We'd play I Spy or car bingo. And while driving along, Dad could see through the back of his head. He knew immediately when we were misbehaving. And I know he had superpowers because I watched the Spider-Man movie. Dad could reach back while driving with his left hand, and he could wreak havoc on any portion of the back seat, no matter how remote, with his stretchy arm. He had a great sense of humor, and he loved a good joke. He was good with people. His staff at NASA loved him and respected him, and he was courteous to all. He always had that big grin on his face. Just watch the slideshow and you'll see what I mean. This is not to say that he never got upset. When he did get mad, it was usually with just cause. A bulky automobile could elicit a long, passionate stream of colorful metaphors. Mother was often horrified, but I found these meltdowns humorous and quite instructive. Rarely, even our mom could push him over the edge. Sorry, Mom. I remember another episode where we were on vacation. We went into a little, what do you call it, a welcome center in Missouri to find a place to stay at a good restaurant. And in the course of it, Dad announced that it was late and that we needed to bed down for the night. Well, I thought Mother was going to have a stroke at this choice of phrases, and the battle began. We went on through the checking into the motel, the meal. We returned, and I thought perhaps we were all going to perish. I threw myself on the bed and went, ah! And Mom said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, I'm exhausted and I need to bed down for the night." Laughter prevailed, and it was over, but it's the episode I think that we both, that David and I, Mom, most remember. Even at such moments, Dad could teach me something. Maybe it was what to do, maybe it was what not to do. And I remember one Thanksgiving, Dad had gone golfing. He came in and said, "Get your football." I said, "What?" "Get your football and get in the car." I think David had gone with him to golf. He drove me out to the Play City Golf, walked across 2 or 3 holes to the woods, and just pointed up, and there, way up in the tree, was an iron. I'm not good with football. I threw and threw and threw, and after 20 or 30 minutes, I knocked the thing down. We were walking back to the car, and I thought, did I learn anything from this? Yes. Control your temper and be frugal. So years later, while we were on vacation in western North Carolina, up in the mountains, Mom and Dad were with us, and we went golfing at a little golf course up there that's nice. And Dad was there, Alan and a friend were there, and we got to about the 8th hole, and I was doing terribly. And I just towed one right left into the water, and I was furious and threw my driver into the pond. And turned around, Dad was looking at me, and I was like, "Don't go there." Kevin calling pot black. So I thought, cheapness, frugality struck. I felt remorse, and the stupid golf club was hollow, so it was just bobbing and mocking me. So I went in the water and got it. I came out, wet to the waist, with seaweed hanging off. I imagine I looked like Ted Kennedy at Chappaquiddick. Anyway, as I walked out of the water, I thought, have I learned anything here? And the answer is yes. I learned that the old adage is true. The golf club never falls far from the tree. Dad was honest and trustworthy, mostly. When I would jump off the edge of the swimming pool, he was waiting to catch me. I knew it was okay, and I would jump off every time. He did bend the truth a little sometimes, but it was what I consider expected or forgiven dad fibs, such as tales about the fat man in the red suit that comes at Christmas, or when he took the training wheels off my bike, you know, he's sitting there and he says, well, I'm going to push you, so don't let go. I'm not going to let go. We all know how that ended. And he let go and I crashed, but eventually I learned to ride a bike. Dad had so many other qualities. There's so many stories to tell and not enough time to tell them. I can't do justice to the memory of my father's 92 glorious years. So I'll end by reminding you all that even though we won't see him for a little while, we know that he's with God. I picture him as 20 or 30 years old. His body is strong, his mind is sound. He's got that grin on his face. He's been reunited with his parents, his sister Marilyn, his grandparents, Jan's family, and all of those who've gone ahead to blaze a trail for us. Dad, we love you. We miss you. We'll see you soon. You did a good job. You fought the good fight. Yours was a life well lived. Godspeed.